Jason, owner and founder of Seller Fuel here. We have another value pack webinar for you guys this week. This week, we're talking about a very interesting topic that not a lot of Amazon seller and e-commerce owner that I know talk about. We're going to be talking about 7 steps to sell on Amazon Japan with Gary. Gary is the founder of 80/20 Sourcing and also the founder of Seven Figure Seller Summit. Actually, the latest Seven Figure Seller Summit is going to be in Tokyo, Japan next month, which I'm also going. And today we're going to cover all the in and out, the pros and cons, and the thing you need to know to consider before you start studying on Japan. But just a sneak peek, Amazon Japan is a huge opportunity. Not a lot of seller is selling in that platform. Of course, Gary is going to tell you all about it. The reason why it is opportunity and why you should be looking into selling in Amazon Japan this year. So thank you, Gary, for being on the call.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. I'm super excited, and greetings from Tokyo. It's early here in the morning, but I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for waking up so early. I think it's 6 a.m. over there in
6
Tokyo,
a.m., yeah, bright and early. Yeah.
right? Yeah, thank you for jumping on. And I think you are full of value. You have so much experience selling online. I think over the past 10 years, so you have over like a decade of experience on not just doing international trade, international businesses, and also sourcing. So for those of you that's watching live, please comment with your questions throughout the webinar, and we'll try to answer any of your questions toward the end of the webinar today. For those of you that's watching the replay later, once we finish the recording today, feel free to drop your question into the comment section still, because we'll try to get back to you as well. So yeah, Gary, go ahead, take it away. You want to share your screen, and I can share it. I can share it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, today I wanted to give, like Jason's actually coming to Japan for our first ever in-person Amazon conference. I mean, and I just found out recently this is the first ever Amazon Seller Conference in Japan. Like,
Oh,
not
okay.
even like in Japanese has anyone done this before. So this is
Really?
really like,
Oh,
we're breaking new ground here. And I'll share some more facts and figures today, as well as the 7 steps that you can do to get started. And before we get started, who is this training for today? This training is for you if you're an Amazon seller, you're already selling in the US, or you're already selling in Europe. And let's say you're doing maybe 6, 7 figures already, and you want to scale your business. Japan is one of the biggest opportunities that, competition is very low. Amazon, like recently, I mean, they're exploding here in Japan. And let me get into the slides, so I'll show you guys more. All right. So let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen okay? Jason, can you see my screen okay? I'm not getting any audio.
yes, I can see it. Just when I'm in the background, you couldn't
Okay.
see me, so I'll hide in the
Okay.
background so
Yeah.
I can see it.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. All right. Okay. So I feel like Amazon Japan is kind of the best kept secret about Amazon selling. Not a lot of people are talking about it. And today I wanted to give you the 7 steps how you can get started selling on Amazon Japan. Okay, I took a quick poll recently in a live webinar we did. I polled 230 Amazon sellers. Which marketplaces are you selling in? And then I was shocked to find that there were only 13 people out of 230 that were selling in Amazon Japan. You can see 75% was selling in US, 30% were selling UK, 50% Germany, but only 5%, which is very low. You can see there's actually more people selling in Canada, Italy, Spain, Mexico, etc. Right? That's why I feel like it's a huge opportunity for Amazon sellers. Almost nobody is selling in this fourth biggest Amazon marketplace, and that's kind of ridiculous, right? So today I wanted to help some of you if to kind of get started selling on Amazon Japan if you're already selling in the other marketplaces. All right. Obviously, selling in Japan, it's not like a bed of roses. There are some big challenges, and I've spoken to many sellers. Here are some of the reasons, with language barrier, the cultural differences between Japan and US. I mean, like if you take a Japanese kitchen, obviously it's not going to be huge. It's going to be a lot smaller. There's some differences we'll walk through today. Also, there's certain regulations that you have to comply with, right? There's issues like the import of record, etc. So I'm going to help you overcome some of these challenges today and kind of debunk some of the myths about Japan as well. I mean, you can even sell in Japan without knowing any Japanese. And in fact, I'm kind of embarrassed, but my Japanese isn't very good at all. I've lived here for a couple years now, but I'm able to sell on Amazon Japan despite not really knowing the language. Okay. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop in the chat. And Jason, let me know if there's any questions that you want me to address, because I don't see the chat screen right now during the presentation. Okay. So today, game plan, we're gonna walk you through why you should sell on Amazon Japan, and also the 7 steps to start selling in Japan. And if you want to learn more, we're going to have a live in-person mastermind in Tokyo coming up in less than 2 weeks, April 4th to the 5th. And I think this will be a great event. And it's also during the cherry blossom season, so best time of year to visit. All right, so Jason already gave me a great introduction. Thank you for that. Okay, so I'll walk you through some of the reasons to sell in Japan. And Jason, if you have any comments, feel free to jump in as well. So first off, if you just look at the numbers, Japan is the number 4 biggest Amazon marketplace. There's many more sellers. Excuse me. There's many more sellers in the top 3 markets than the others, than Japan. Recently, I just learned that Amazon Japan is the number 1 e-commerce site in Japan. They overtook Rakuten, and then in terms of the e-commerce penetration rate, 74%. Almost everybody is buying online, and it's forecast to grow at about 60% in Japan. I moved to Tokyo recently, and I see Amazon everywhere. There's those Amazon boxes, and everyone's buying stuff. They're like, when trash day, you see all Amazon boxes everywhere. Even when I was living in Okinawa is like a remote island. It's like one of the most remote places that Amazon offers delivery. I just saw that on LinkedIn the other day, and they can cover there. So same day delivery in Tokyo, kind of like just like in the US. So it's very prevalent. And I moved, into a new apartment with my family here in Tokyo. I was able to furnish like most of the stuff through Amazon, and it's really it's on fire basically in Japan. All right, so
Yeah.
that's number 1 reason.
Oh, Gary, I actually didn't know that Amazon Japan is actually the biggest. I saw Rakuten was the biggest. When did Amazon took over as number 1?
It was recently. In terms of the numbers, like the traffic, Amazon has overtaken Rakuten just recently. I mean, they're still very close, but Amazon has overtaken them recently. Yeah.
I see. So
yeah.
that means even more potential, because Japan marketplace have a potential to be the 2nd largest Amazon marketplace if Amazon keep on taking more and more market share from Rakuten, right?
That's true. Because if you look at the population, 126 million people in Japan, right? And that's double the population of UK. And right now the currency is the Japanese yen is weak. So that's one of the reasons why Japan has fallen to number 4. It was number 3 for some time, but because of the weak yen, it's fallen behind UK. But it's possible that Japan can overtake UK. Yeah. All right. So that was the number 1 reason. Number 2, this is a very short case study of one US brand that successfully entered Japan. This is based on one of our speakers, Nick Katz. He's a 7-figure seller, and then he worked with this US brand, to enter Japan. So they were able to sell 125 million yen in 13 months' time, from January 1st, 2022 to January 30th, 2023. And this, based on the exchange rate, it's about $965,593. Obviously, your mileage may vary. Everyone's business is different, but sellers are potentially making more money in Japan than other marketplaces. And there's many reasons why, which we'll talk about in just a minute. One of the top reasons is there's far less and there's weaker competition in Amazon Japan. If you look at the numbers, US obviously has the most sellers. They have over 1 million active. I mean, registered sellers, I believe there's 2 to 3 million. Okay. You see a lot more sellers in US, Germany, and even Italy, Spain, India, etc. Right? Japan is actually the number 8 number of most sellers. So if you think about the numbers, guys, it's the 4th biggest market, but it's only the 8th largest number of sellers, right? There's something wrong here, right? There's a lot of room to get, to sell more in Japan if there's not that many sellers. There's only about 173,000 sellers selling in Japan on Amazon FBA. Okay. In terms of the competition, it's a lot less sophisticated in Japan. It's like in terms of listings, we just learned recently about half of the sellers in Japan are from China. And I'm not, discriminating against anybody, obviously, but a lot of times, Chinese entrepreneurs, they move very fast, very quickly, but they don't necessarily spend a lot of enough time in the detail of the listings, right? So we see a lot of the Japanese listings, the translations are very crude, they're not very localized. I mean, and if a Japanese person sees it, it doesn't really build a lot of confidence in the listing. All right. So that's why we see there's less competition, there's weaker competition in Amazon Japan. All right. Number 4 big reason, and this is a huge one that a lot of people are not aware of. The average review threshold in Amazon Japan is a lot lower than the review threshold in Amazon US and Amazon EU. So what does that mean? That means that if you're already selling, let's say in the US, and if it's it's a seasoned SKU, you've been selling for some time, and let's say you have like 600 reviews, right? There's actually a way that you can move your Amazon global reviews from the US to Japan. So that means you can take those 600 reviews in that listing, and then you can start selling on Amazon Japan. And then from day one, you have 600 reviews. All right. So what does that mean? That means that number one, this builds social proof. It builds trust because think about it. Usually, when you launch a new product, you start with 0, right? But you have 600. And number 2 is your 600. I mean, compared to Japan, it actually looks a lot stronger compared to the competition. So let's say if you have 600 reviews in the US, you're only like the middle of the pack, right? In terms of the number of reviews, there's people with like 10,000 reviews, right? But if you move that to Japan, you might be at the top of the pack because the other sellers maybe only have like a couple hundred or even a couple dozen reviews, right? In one of these examples we saw with diapers, right? There were 70,000 global reviews, but in Japan there were only 13, right? I mean, so you can see the competition, like in terms of the review threshold in Japan is a lot lower. So that means again, guys, if you're already selling in US or EU and your listing has a lot of reviews, there's an opportunity to move all those reviews to Japan. So from day one, this means you have social proof, you build trust, and also this can lower your PPC cost. All right. So let's keep going. Sorry. Okay. Number 5 is lower PPC cost. So average CPC as low as 29 cents per click. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? I mean, compared to US, compared to EU, a lot lower PPC cost. So, I mean, I don't think I need to say anything more about that, right? It's a huge opportunity, cut your cost to sell in Japan. Number 6, you don't need to know Japanese to sell in Japan. Amazon Seller Central in Japan is in English. It's the same interface that you're already familiar with. So there will not be like a big difference or big learning curve. In terms of customer service, however, in Amazon Japan, you're required to provide Japanese customer service. So what I did is I hired a part-time Japanese VA, a virtual assistant, to reply to my customer questions. So I was able to solve that problem. And recently there's new tools out there, AI, ChatGPT. ChatGPT's translation, I don't know if you've played with it, guys, or Jason. The translation quality is a lot higher than Google Translate. So that's a great way to, I mean, I'm not saying you should replace that, with hiring a live person, but in a pinch, you can use that to translate.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, because we have been using ChatGPT as a team for social media posts, email marketing, even YouTube video script, but we haven't been using it for translation. So we'll definitely play around with it as well, because we're also trying to expand into Amazon Japan this year for some of our brand. So
yeah, definitely. I actually spoke to my former Japanese VA recently, and then I was showing him ChatGPT, And we just did like a quick test, to ask ChatGPT to write a customer service email and translate into Japanese, and he was shocked. I mean, he's a native Japanese speaker. He's local. He's like, "Wow, man, that's like perfect." So it's far better than Google Translate. Obviously, this is not like a detailed scientific study, but in my anecdotal experience, I found it's a lot better than Google Translate. All right. Obviously, you also need to translate your listings localization. So we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Okay, number 7 is on the supply chain side, and this is a big one. Not a lot of people even thought about this. Okay, if you just look at the map, guys, Japan is a lot closer to China, right? I assume most people are sourcing from China, right? If you ship a container, or even if you ship a LCL from China to Japan, it only takes about 7 to 10 days, right? If you compare to USA, it takes like 30 days, 45 days, or even longer with delays, etc. Okay, so it's going to be faster. What does that mean? That means that you can turn over your inventory quicker. You can potentially place smaller orders because you have a shorter lead time. And obviously that just helps with your cash flow. And cash flow is one of the biggest things for e-commerce sellers, as everybody knows, right? So it's going to be faster shipping, and not only that, it's going to be cheaper shipping. I mean, if you just look at the distance, guys, it's a lot closer. So you could potentially cut your shipping costs. Okay. Number 3 is the tariffs, right? Obviously, there's still duties for products going from China to Japan, similar to US, but there's no trade war. There's no China quote unquote Trump tariff going to Japan. So you can immediately cut out that 25% landed cost, right? So, I mean, obviously do the math, guys, but your landed cost for the same product to land it from China to Japan would be lower than China to US or China to Europe, just because of the supply chain. All right. So I think some of you guys might be running the numbers in your head, right? It's starting to make sense. All right. So that's a big one, the supply chain. All right. Number 8, one of the myths is you have to start a Japanese company to sell in Japan. That's false. You don't need a Japanese company to sell in Japan. Okay. All you have to do is you need a Japanese importer record to legally import into Japan. So one difference is, you cannot use like a US LLC to import directly, but what you can do is basically you hire a Japanese importer. So they'll act as the importer. So they'll pay the duties and then you'll pay them. Right. And then there's also another advantage is they can help you find out all the compliance regulations that you have to know about. And we'll talk about that a little later as well. Okay. But this IOR, this is a very important step that every seller that wants to sell in Japan has to consider.
I have a quick question on this, Gary. Can I use my father-in-law as my import of record in Japan because I have relative in Japan?
By definition, it can be a person that has an address in Japan. So yes, you can. When I'm living in Japan, I can just use my personal address because I'm living in Japan. So yes, technically you can do that.
I don't necessarily
recommend that because
okay.
Yeah, I would go with an official one, like an IOR, because obviously they're professional. They can advise you on certain things. Like for example, just a quick aside with one of my kitchen products that I'm selling in the US. It's a 6-figure brand. We've been selling a number of years. I did initial research in Japan. I saw nobody was selling it. I mean, wow, I'm like, there's a big gap in the market, right? So I spoke with the compliance, the import of record, and also they check with the compliance in Japan. There's a law in Japan that this product it cannot be used by consumers. It can only be used in professional kitchens and professional restaurants. So it's not for commercial use, right? So it's actually against the law, because so luckily I talked to the importer of record, so they recommended me against that, because if I just jump the gun, if I just imported it probably would get either confiscated at Japanese customs or it would be stuck at Amazon's warehouse because I can't sell it by law, right? That's why it's very important to talk to an importer of record. I hope that makes sense.
That makes 100% sense. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Okay, number 9, another myth. Okay, you do not need to register for VAT or GST in Japan. Okay, it's different than EU, so it's actually simpler than selling in EU because everybody's heard of all of the VAT and Brexit and all that all that stuff, right? You don't need that to start selling in Japan. There's also something called consumption tax. in the beginning, at the start, you don't need to file for a consumption tax number when you're first starting out. Okay. Um, Obviously, I'm not a tax professional, so don't take this as legal advice, guys. But just from entrepreneur to entrepreneur, I can share with you that this is one less obstacle that you have to do in the beginning. Um, as you get more sales, there's a certain threshold. I think it's around like mid six figures US, like half million. Around that ballpark, that's when you need to consider registration for consumption tax. But if you're getting that much sales volume in Japan, I mean, you should be happy that you can start taking these steps, guys. So key takeaway is starting out, you don't need to register for VAT. All right. And last thing is in Japan, there's actually some cool marketing channels local to Japan that you can build an audience. You can make a lot of sales at low cost. We don't have time to talk too much about this today, but there's different channels available. And yeah, some of them are local to Japan. One of them is called Line, and it's very cool. But let's keep moving, guys. So any questions so far, Jason, before we move on to part two, the 7 steps to start
Yeah,
selling?
Line is pretty much the WeChat of Japan. Everyone use it. It's just like China,
Yeah,
everyone use WeChat. So
yeah, they're super powerful, and you can do product insert cards. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with that too. You get more reviews, to build lists, to launch to, etc. But yeah, let's keep going. All right, so part two, the 7 steps to start selling into Amazon Japan. All right, so the first step is to do product market fit analysis. So number one is you want to at least, as entrepreneurs, you know, we want to minimize our risk before entering a new market, right? So one of the best ways to do that is there's certain tools out there that you can use to get market intelligence. You can do research on the keywords, on the competition, on the search volume. So very quickly, um, here are some of the tools that you can use to get started. And again, you do not need to know Japanese to do this. That's one of the myths as well. Okay. Um, and starting with product and keyword research, Helium 10 works for Amazon Japan, and Jungle Scout also works for Amazon Japan. So you can get started with those. Okay. Um, second thing is Amazon Japan's website, amazon.co.jp. Um, I would search my keyword on that site first for my product. So let's say, I'm selling, like a water bottle. I would search water bottle. And then one quick hack is in Amazon Japan site, there's actually a language toggle setting where you can switch to English. So you're able to search in Amazon Japan in English for, let's say, like your water bottle. So that way, instantly you can see what competitors are selling there, how much they're selling there, and then you can run, Helium, you can run Jungle Scout on the numbers to see like the search volume, et cetera, right? And then you can also do reverse ASIN searches on the competition to find out the keywords that are ranked for, but they're all in Japanese, right? So, Jason knows Japanese, but if you didn't know Japanese, like I also wanted to share a quick hack with you guys. We actually had a live webinar where we did this, and one of the podcasts recently, Kevin King was asking me this question. So how do you do product research on Japan if you don't know Japanese? Okay, I'll share this quick hack. Okay, what you do is you take Google Sheets and then you copy and paste, like you do a reverse ASIN search on the Japanese competitor. So let's say the water bottle. So you get let's say you get a whole bunch of Japanese keywords water bottle related. You don't understand it, right? So you copy and paste it into a single column in Google Sheets, and then on the next column, there's actually a formula that you can use in Google Sheets to translate the Japanese into English. Okay. I don't have the formula here. All you guys got to do is Google it, or Jason can probably find it for you guys. But you put that formula on the next column to the right, and then you just drag and drop it, and then instantly you got like all the translations. Okay. It's not 100%, but at least you have a general idea of what the Japanese keywords are ranking, right? And then you can take that and you can do all of your
Gary,
additional
I saw
research, etc.
I saw a different webinar you did a few weeks ago. I can try to send out the replay of that if
Yeah,
anyone want to watch
yeah,
it. The other
definitely.
webinar you did is more detail on step by step. I think
Yes.
yeah.
That we did a live webinar dedicated just to this. We had 3 experts sit in. Ritu Java did a live over the shoulder walkthrough how you do this, and then Nick Katz also shared how you can use Google and YouTube. to search for your product just to find out, are Japanese people even using this, right? And then, Brandon Young was on it running Data Dive to find some gaps in the market. And then Bradley Sutton from Helium was there as well. So yeah, definitely check out that video if you want to learn more, guys. Okay, but I don't have time to get too far deep into that. So let's keep going. All right. Okay, so after you've checked your product market fit, number two is I would check your product regulations, right? I mean, talk to your importer of record that's familiar with Japan. And then there's 4 key categories that I want to share with you guys. To these 4 categories, if you're selling in these categories, you gotta be a little bit more careful because you will have more compliance regulations to deal with. Okay, these are supplements, cosmetics, medical devices, and anything that touches food or drink, right? So like a plastic water bottle, you would need to get compliance testing for this. Okay, so Japanese compliance is stricter than some other markets. I found out when I was importing one of my products is you can't just take a lab test from any laboratory. Japanese regulators, they have certain labs that are accredited. So it has to be like one that's already, like designated for Japan. So it has to be like Tokyo, like, SGS or like Hong Kong SGS. It cannot be just like any lab that you have, etc. Okay. So quick tip for you guys, if you're selling these 4 key categories, definitely pay more attention to the compliance test. All right. Step number 3 is to be aware of the compliance, not just the requirements, but also the testing costs, because the Japanese compliance test, they have a couple of differences. One is the cost. It depends on the size and complexity. So the bigger the product, the more complex, the more parts, the more the cost, because you have to test every single one of those parts. So the water bottle, you have to test the bottle itself, you have to test the top, you have to test, if there's any like, silicone ring inside, if there's like a handle, etc. Anything that touches food or water or drink, you need to test that. Okay. And then you also have to test the separate parts. So this could potentially add up, guys. So you have to do the math, whether it's worthwhile. The compliance test is one that you really have to figure out. Yeah.
I have a quick question on that because we currently use a lab. I think it's the one we use called Quima. They do a lot of US lab. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they also provide the same testing for Japan as well? Do you know?
They do provide the testing, but Jason, what I would do is talk to an IOR about your specific product, because Japan's regulators may not accept that certification from Quima.
Okay.
Because again, they may only have like, let's say 3 labs that they accept. So your test has to come from one of those labs. It can't just be any lab. So it's a little different from other markets.
Got it.
But definitely talk to an IOR before you before you do that.
Got it.
Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. Let's move on to step 4. Step 4, one recommendation I like to share is if you have a trademark and if you've already brand registered your product, let's say in the US, you can transfer that brand registry to Japan. You can do that quickly through Amazon. And the advantage of doing this is if there's any other like competitors or like hijackers, especially, this happens a lot. This happened to one of my products as well. Like unauthorized hijacker sold my product. I was selling US like as a drop shipper, and then they were selling it for like 3 times the price that I was selling it in Japan. Okay, so what can you do to get rid of these guys? You can use brand registry, right? If you transfer it to Japan and you have a trademark, then you can get those listings taken down through Amazon without doing a test buy, right? So obviously people know about test buys, and that takes time. You got to take pictures, etc., open cases. But if you have brand registry, that's one advantage, getting rid of the hijackers. The second advantage is brand registry. It unlocks brand analytics, which is additional keyword research, search volume, frequency that you can get from Amazon. This is direct from the source, so you can get more information about your product, your search volume, and also your competition. So this is a very important step that I recommend. Step 4. All right, transferring your brand registry to Japan. Okay, and then number 5 is to get your translations done. Okay, so to sell in Japan, obviously you need to have your listings translated into Japanese. Okay, in this part, I recommend that you hire a translator that is native Japanese, and also ideally someone that's familiar with Amazon SEO and copywriting. Okay, not just some random translator you find off the internet, right? The reason is because just like in the US, how you write your listings, the style, the copywriting will affect your conversion rate. In Japan, as Jason knows, the language, there's different levels of formality, and in these listings, people aren't as like salesy like as they are in the US, right? So there has to be some localization considered when you do these translations, right? So that's why I recommend that you hire a professional to do this for you. Okay.
Yeah, and one thing I learned from your last webinar, Gary, is you will also recommend to include English a little bit in the listing, so it's not purely Japanese as well, because some people still use do some searches in English, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there is a foreign expat population living in Japan. There's Americans, there's like other expats. So some English is okay because it's just like in the US, right? Some people like to rank for Spanish keywords, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is, how certain Japanese people they perceive like foreign brands. Like some people like they like foreign brands, like they're kind of cool, right? So if you're like for example, I bought like a Dyson vacuum cleaner, right? And they have like they still have English on the product, and so it depends on the brand obviously, but I wouldn't say that um you have to translate like but I mean this is both an art and a science, right? So some English is okay, but it depends on your product.
So I have a follow-up question with that.
Mhm.
When is the timing to also translate your packaging into Japanese so you have a
Mm.
dedicated packaging for Japanese market?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jason. I didn't put that in this presentation. That's a very good question. I would check on some of the packaging requirements because for certain categories like I believe kids like baby products, like the ones that you're in, there may be some additional things you need to put on the packaging. So I would talk to the importer of record to find out what that would be. That may be one adjustment that you have to make. The instructions manual also it should be in Japanese as well. So you would need to get that translation done as well. I would do that as your um, preparing your translations. I would get the packaging translation done, and then when you're talking to your IOR, ask about the packaging requirements for your specific product.
But initially doing the launch is not 100% necessary, if I understand it correctly, to have the entire packaging done in Japanese yet, right?
Um, I- Ideally, you want to have it in Japanese,
Because
or
I remember
yeah,
when I lived in Japan for 5 years, that's a lot of
yeah,
overseas product. They just have a
yeah.
Japanese sticker in the back. That's
You're
it.
right. You're right. Some of those products,
Yeah.
they just put like a sticker over the English,
Yes.
and
Yes.
in a
Yes.
pinch, you can do that. Like
Initially, so we can
yeah,
test out the market. If it
that's
go
right.
well, then you can create a dedicated packaging. So
Yeah,
I think it's easier
yeah.
for some
I
people
mean,
just
if
want to
if
get
you're
it
talking
approved.
about like, minimum viable product, lean startup methodology mindset, then yes, just get like a sticker with the Japanese, paste it over the English, have your supplier paste it over so that way you can comply, in Japanese. And obviously the FNSKU, that has to be the Japanese FNSKU as well. That sticker has to be on there as well. I see a lot of these products, they have like the Japanese sticker stuck over their UPC code, right, in Japan. So yes, you can do that. Okay. All right. Let's keep going, guys. Step 6 is localization. This is a little bit beyond translation. You want to ensure that your listings are tailored to the Japanese market and culture. Um, One example is in beauty, right? So obviously in Asia, the beauty, like the standard of beauty is different from the Western, right? So like in the West, people like to be tan, but in Asia, people like fair skin, right? So there has to be some adjustment. So in this example from Maybelline, you can see that they're from New York, but obviously they've localized to like Asian models, and all the details here. I don't know a thing about like makeup, but you can see it's like ultra fluffy. So Jason, you're right? You can see they keep some keywords in English, but they have like more Japanese to kind of expand upon that. And I think Jason, he can read all of this to maybe add some more insight on that. But that's what we mean, right? The brand, you should keep that in English, right? Some of the key features Japanese language actually, like, there's a lot of stuff borrowed from English. Like ultra lights. There's
Yeah.
it's actually transliterated into
So for
into
those of you that never read Japanese or doesn't understand Japanese, Japanese have like three main character system. There's hiragana, there's katakana, there's kanji. So katakana is where most of the people will just use English word and they translate it word by word, and it actually sounds like English. For example, fashion brow is going to be fashion brow. Like in Japanese, of
Yeah.
course, the accents are going to be a little bit different because Japanese people also look for that. It's like then they know this is a foreign brand, and in Japanese possession, just like Gary mentioned, is high quality. If
Yeah.
it's like a foreign brand,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. That's right. 100%. It's higher quality, and sometimes it's cool. Some, like, young people, they want to find some cool stuff that's different, right? So yeah. Okay, great stuff, guys. So that's number 6, localization. And also, don't forget your images, guys, right? Your product images. You can, if you have text in it, if you have infographics, you can translate those into Japanese as well. Okay. And the last step is to get ready to sell on Amazon, Amazon Japan. One of the key things, before you start selling is, Amazon has a tool, build an international listings tool, so you're able to move your listing and carry over your reviews into Japan. So those are the 7 steps, guys. If anyone has any questions, or definitely let me know in the chat. Any questions before we move on?
I think there was very, very value pack. It's almost information overload a little bit. There's a lot of information
Yeah,
because if
yeah.
you're considering expanding into a different country altogether. And I think this is also why there's not a lot of people selling in Japan, because Japan is intimidating for a lot of North American and European seller, because it's not English. It's not even
Yeah.
like they couldn't even recognize the character at all. But
Yeah.
I would want to say, like you say in the beginning, is huge opportunity as long as you're willing to take the leap of faith and do some researches and going through the step that Gary just talked about, like do your product market fit analysis that you can do without even speaking the language, and see if that's a potential. And I want to kind of, because I watched your webinar a couple of days ago that you did, I watched a replay of it. One of the major key takeaway I got is you need to understand Japanese people's lifestyle is very, very different than America. There's no space. Kitchen is super tiny. There's no yard. It's just a very different lifestyle. So some product you are currently selling like really, really well in US. I just say you have an outdoor like gardening product. It's probably not going to sell so well in Japan. It's just a culture thing.
Yeah.
So of course you need
unless
to
you have like a window garden, right? Like rather than like a
exactly.
backyard garden. Like think about an apartment. I have like a tiny little, box garden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anything that's space saver sell well in Japan. It's like a space saver, it sell really well in Japan. So that just sounds like high level culture thing you need to understand before you jump like 100% in. But just like Gary was mentioning during the webinar today, is you can do a lot of research without really knowing the language. I just have a little bit of advantage over all the other one because I used to live in Japan for 5 years. My wife is Japanese. I also speak Japanese fluently. So I just have a little bit of advantage compared to all the other seller that's coming in. But that doesn't mean that for you that only, for those of you that only speak English and Spanish, it shouldn't turn you away. As an entrepreneur, we figure things out, right? Use ChatGPT with all the other Google Translate things. So
yeah, 100%. And remember, guys, I'm still learning Japanese. I'm still like maybe at a, I don't know, first grade level, right? So I was able to do all this stuff, with these tools, talking to other entrepreneurs, you guys can have a great resource with Jason. And, I was talking to, one of my good friends, Nick Katz, and he's actually one of the speakers at the mastermind. So maybe we should, talk about the bonus step if people want to learn more about selling in Japan, Jason.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah. I think, the main thing, there's not a lot of information selling on Amazon Japan online. I mean, to be honest, now I'm sure you guys have searched, Jason has searched. There's not a lot of good information. There's only like 1 or 2 people talking about Japan. That's why I really wanted to, excuse me. That's why I really wanted to put together this in-person Amazon Japan Mastermind in Tokyo, April 4th to 5th. So it's really designed to help, let's say if you're doing 6, 7 figures or 8 figures to enter the Japanese market. And you've seen, like, we've had that short case study, certain sellers, they're adding additional, $965,000 to their revenue, right? So that's why I decided to create this 2-day live in-person event in Tokyo, where we're going to offer basically a turnkey solution to sell into Amazon Japan, right? So there's launch strategies that are different in Japan. There's external marketing strategies native to Japan. And I think one of the most important things is, we're going to share with you a complete roadmap, how to sell into Japan, how to sell up to 965,000, and all of the connections you need to make along the way, right? So we talked about importer of record. We're going to have at least 2 importer of records at the conference in the same room, right? So if you're like Jason, you're selling your kids category, your baby products, right? Oh, what do I need to put on the package? What do I need to test lab? Can I use my KEMA test certificate? That person is in the same room as you. Think about it. This is going to be a small group. It's not going to be a huge event. We're going to only have about 50 people at the event, right? You're going to have plenty of time to get all of your questions answered, right? If you have a question about warehousing, 3PLs, right? There's someone that can help you with that. Translations, etc. Every single step of the way, we're going to leave no stone unturned. So you're going to learn the A to Z to sell into Japan, even if you don't speak any Japanese, okay? So we'll also cover some common mistakes that people are making when selling into Japan. Okay, so this is going to be a 2-day event. I know it's coming up very soon, guys. I think this will be a great opportunity, not only to learn about selling, but also to network with other sellers. We have some top 8-figure Amazon Japan sellers, 7-figure Amazon Japan sellers. And also, it's the best time of year to visit Japan. And Jason knows this very well, right? It's the cherry blossom season. It's the sakura season. So Tokyo is covered with cherry blossoms. And we're actually, tourists will actually pick this time of year to visit Japan just for sightseeing. So, I coincided this to also deliver you the
book your
Japan
flight
Mastermind.
ticket early because it's getting expensive.
Yeah,
Book
definitely.
your
If you
flight
see
ticket
this,
early.
if this is resonating with you, check the flights. Yeah, and yeah, so it'll be a 2-day event, and then very quickly, this is the event agenda. We have some additional speakers as well. We're going to cover the roadmap to selling on 965,000. Nick Katz is going to give this talk. He's a 7-figure seller. He's been living in Japan 30 years. He's the one that helped that brand sell 965,000. So he's going to walk you through. He's going to open the playbook, guys, exactly how he did that. And then we have 8-figure seller Bernie Thompson. He's been selling for 10 years, selling in Japan. We have Eliezer Barshap. He's going to talk about IOR, how to import successfully. We have Unigay. They're talking about compliance and shipping. They're a big IOR as well. PackView Helium 10 is one of the sponsors. They're talking about retail media, how taking off in Japan, how you can be part of that, learning a little bit more, beyond just Amazon as well. We may cover Rakuten as well. And then we also have Amazon. Amazon's presenting at the event as well. So Jeff Cohen is flying from Seattle all the way to Tokyo to present to you guys. He's going to share about Amazon ads, best practices for increasing brand discoverability. And then we're going to have a panel as well. So we're inviting some of the other speakers to come on. And then we're going to have a mastermind in the afternoon. So we're going to offer additional chances for people like Jason to ask more questions about importing, about strategy, etc. Right. So that's gonna be day 1, and day 2 is very value packed as well. How to make your product Japan ready without changing product. How to drive external traffic. Ritu Java, she was voted the best speaker at one of the recent events. So she's coming all the way to Japan. She's lived in Japan for 17 years. She's fluent Japanese. So she's going to share about Amazon SEO, PPC, keyword research.
Yeah, I met her last year. I actually spoke with her in Japanese last year in a different Amazon event in I think Oregon. So
yeah, she's lived in Japan 17 years. She has a wealth of knowledge, and she helped me PPC Ninja, they helped me with one of my products in Japanese, and really helped with the PPC campaigns, the keyword research. I mean, beyond just like the research I could do. I mean, those hacks that I shared that can get you started, but if you want next level, definitely talk to people like Ritu, right? I mean, she knows her stuff. And we also, I mean, there's more topics as well. I'm not going to cover everything just for the sake of time. We have localization, Japan, Amazon strategies. Bradley Sutton's coming as well. He's going to share how to use Helium to do keyword research. And then we have another mastermind on day 2. We also have some, unique Japan experiences as well. Day 1, at the end, we actually have a cherry blossom social event here. So that means that we're going to, during the in a Tokyo park, like underneath the cherry blossom trees, we're going to lay down a spread. We're going to bring some, Japanese sake, sushi, bento boxes, and have a good time.
Yeah, I was telling Gary before the meeting, this is actually really, really close to where I used to live in Japan. I used to live right next to the Tokyo Park for 5 years.
So Jason could be like your local guide. I mean, he knows this place better than me. So you can take, maybe show us some cool places.
I know a good ramen store. I actually know a really good ramen store near there.
Yeah, I love ramen. I mean, and ramen in I don't know how much it costs now, but back when I was in LA, last time I visited, like a bowl of ramen, one of the best ones in Sawtell, it costs like $17, with like tax and tip. And here in Japan, I mean, it's much cheaper. I mean, ramen is just like a commodity. You can get a solid bowl for like,
I think this is one thing that a lot of people don't understand. Every time I tell people I'm going to Tokyo, isn't that very expensive? No, it's actually cheaper than US.
You tell them, Jason, because I mean the currency rate of the yen is actually very weak. I mean, if someone visited Japan like 10 years ago, you'll be in for a shock. Like, stuff is actually cheaper than before. And then especially compared to US with the high inflation, from what I've been hearing, I mean, you might be in for a pleasant surprise, right? Things are a lot cheaper than before. And and it's very safe here in Japan, and it's very friendly here. You don't have to worry about.
I'm actually going to Japan multiple times this year. I'm going, of course, in April. I'm going back again in June, beginning of the June. Then I'm going back again in the end of June.
Wow. And Japan was like voted the #1 most wanted place to visit. After the pandemic, and Japan's it's open. So I hope you guys can make it. I'd love to.
Live viewer comment say he's on the way to Japan.
All right, we'll see you there. Make sure you can grab your ticket, and Jason will drop the link. And
I will treat you for the drink will be on me if you came.
All right, you hold him to that. Hold Jason to that. First round, and then we have some other cool stuff planned as well. Karaoke. And we, some other cool stuff. We're gonna do go-karting. You can actually do go-karting on the streets of Tokyo. You can dress up as Super Mario, just like that video game.
That one was. I didn't know you can do that. Even so, I lived there for all this year. I didn't know you could do that.
I mean, one of the other speakers, they're like, "Oh, I'm so happy you did that. I lived in Japan for 30 years. I've never done that. I want to do that. So we're gonna do that. So we got a lot of cool stuff. Not just the the content at the mastermind, right? Obviously, you're gonna take away a playbook, how to get started, and also, like, even more importantly, like, all the connections, right? The import of record, the compliance, the localization experts, and even Amazon. Amazon's gonna have Jeff Cohen being there. Some of their Japan reps are coming as well. So think about those relationships, right? Like, if you get stuck, maybe you have that connection with that manager that you met in Tokyo, right? So they can help, get you out of, like, the, back and forth, like, with the cases, etc. Everyone knows that nightmare, right? So think of the networking, think of the friendships and the potential mastermind partners that you can build with your business, right? So I think, it's very powerful. And again, this is the first ever Amazon conference in Japan. So you guys will be the first movers, and I'd love to invite you guys to come. And do you want to tell them how they can learn more with the website, Jason?
I did share the link in the chat. Of course, is at 7figuresellerjapanmastermind.com. And there's also an affiliate link, but you don't have to use my affiliate link. You can just go to their website and just let Gary know that I sent you.
Just tell them. Jason sent you.
Yeah, but I think it's just we are kind of like right against the time, so I don't know how many people can make an international trip this quickly. Like I do, I make decision pretty quick, so I just buy a flight ticket and I get on.
So, yeah, I mean, it is an investment, right, guys? But I think at the same time, you know, if you can unlock an additional, let's say $300K or 600K a year. Right. What's a couple $1,000s, compared to that?
Most of the US seller I talk to, the main problem is they don't have a passport. Go get your passport. Go get your passport.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing you do need, guys.
Yeah,
I forgot to mention that. You got to have a passport. Okay. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. I mean, you don't need a visa. If you're American, you don't need a visa, but you definitely need a passport.
Exactly.
So
just people are just so used to just going to conferences in US, they don't really see a big need to get passport based on a lot of sellers I talk to. So yeah.
That's true. Okay, that's one thing you do need. Like FAQ, you will need a passport. A passport. Okay, all right. So so thank you very much for having me on today. Hopefully that was helpful, and hope to see some of you guys in Japan. Any other questions?
No, it was very, very helpful. And I was actually asking a lot of selfish questions for my own business because I'm really expanding into Japan. Really going through all the steps.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people have the same questions as you, right? So people watching the replay will get some more value out of that. And I think, the last thing is like the mindset of selling in a new market, right? I mean, obviously there's a lot of challenges. I mean, you got to deal with IOR, you got to deal with translations, etc. But think about it this way, there's all these challenges that once you overcome them, they're like a barrier to entry against your competition.
Exactly.
Right. So it's like a moat, against the competition. So you'll be on the inside, right? But your competitors are going to be out, right? So that's why if you come, you're going to build all these connections. You'll learn from people that've done it before, and and you'll be able to hang out with Jason.
I think it's really the first mover advantage too, because just like you showed in the beginning, this is a very, very underserved market still, but who knows? Maybe in the next 2 years, everyone's selling on Amazon Japan.
It could be.
The opportunity window is kind of small. If a lot of people jumping on, you will get like saturated. Hopefully not, but you never know with this kind of things. Like I believe Amazon EU wasn't saturated a few years ago, but it's getting more and more saturated. Like Amazon UK is getting more saturated. So, but that's just how you just need to be quick on making your decision. That's why we're entrepreneur, right?
Exactly. And the first mover advantage. I mean, this is the first conference anyone has ever done, right? So we're really showing the playbook. So, I mean, you guys, right now, first mover advantage, right?
And for those of you that sell toys, I'm also going to International Toy Show in Tokyo in the beginning of June. That's why I'm going back to Tokyo in June to attend the International Toy Show, one of the biggest toy show in Asia, actually. And because that's what I do, I sell toys. So so I'm trying to like connect with some new suppliers, and just trying to maybe I also is thinking about doing it both way, not only selling into Japan, but also taking product from Japan and sell into US, because that's a huge market. Look at all the anime store in the mall. That's like anime store everywhere.
Pokemon.
That. Look at all the anime.
That's one additional thing. I mean, first off, as business owners, you can write off the entire trip, right? This is for a conference, this is business meetings, entertainment, hotel, flight, everything you can write off. I mean, obviously talk to your tax accountant, but you can write off everything as an entrepreneur. Number two is think about the market research you can do in Japan. So if you're selling toys, you can visit a Japanese toy store. You can see, what's selling in Japan, and maybe you can find out, hey, this is something cool. I've never seen this in the US. Right? Maybe let's do some research, back home. Maybe we can bring this over, right?
Exactly.
And, I was talking to an 8-figure seller on his private mastermind. It was like mind blowing for him. He's like, think about that. We can even like set up like a visit to one of the big shops, like just so you can get a feel for the differences for the stuff that's selling in Japan.
We should arrange a trip to Don Quixote, which is one of the big retailers.
Don Quixote could be a good one. There's a lot of food stuff, or Tokyo Hands, Loft are some other good ones. I mean, there's so much opportunity, and it's Japan, right? I mean, food and culture and
Yeah.
all that cool stuff. So
And for the single guys, the girls, the single guy, I'm married, but for the single guys,
yeah, I mean it's you got something for everyone. I'll put it that way. We got something for everyone. If you're a kid or if you're a single guy or you're a business owner,
for sure.
yeah, something for everyone.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I know it's very early in Japan. And for those who's watching the replay or watching us live, please let us know in the comment if you have any more additional questions. And I would love to see you in Japan if you can make it this year. And if not, maybe I'll see you next year because Gary, you're gonna do it every year, right?
I hope so. I mean, but we want to get as many people as we can. So if you are
Yeah.
thinking about coming, just come this year. That'd be awesome.
For sure,
right.
for sure. Thank you so
Okay.
much. I really appreciate your time. And
Thank you, Jason.
So,
I hope this is helpful. And thank you so much, guys. Hope to see some of you here in Tokyo. All right. Good luck.
thank you so much.